Hello, we are on the circulatory system and heart disease part 2, which is module 3. For today's lecture, the goals will be for you to know how blood flows through the heart and blood vessels. So the pathway blood takes through all of your body. Then we're going to go over a heartbeat. And finally, we're going to talk about how the pressure of blood differs between the different blood vessels. So first, we're going to talk about blood flow, but in order to do this, you have to become familiar with the different components of the heart. I have little ways to help you remember this, so just listen carefully. So the heart has 4 chambers. The top 2 chambers are the atriums. So when we refer to a heart, we say right versus left, imagining that this is your heart. So for example, the bigger atrium that's shown there would be the right atrium, because whose ever heart this is, that's their right side. And the smaller one is the left atrium. Now it's smaller here because also there's a blood vessel covering part of it. Okay, so the atriums, the right and left atriums. So those are the top chambers. The bottom chambers are the ventricles. So again, we'd say the right and left ventricle. I usually tell my students to remember this because A comes before V in the alphabet. So the atriums are on top, the ventricles are on the bottom. Dividing these 2 chambers are valves. These valves prevent blood moving backwards when the heart's contracting. And the valves are easy to remember because they're the atrioventricular valves, because they're between the atriums and the ventricles. Short name for these are the AV valves. There's one more valve, which is the semilunar valve, right? Which when the blood is leaving the heart, it prevents the backflow. So you have the atriums on top, the ventricles, the AV valves, and the semilunar valve. So now we're going to discuss how blood moves through the heart. Blood is coming to the heart that has just delivered oxygen to your cells and glucose, and it comes back to the heart before reaching the lungs to get reoxygenated. So blood that's coming back to the heart from the upper body, like from your head, your brain, would be coming back through superior vena cava. So this vena cava is indicated 1 there. It's bringing blood back to the heart. So it's a vein. Vena is Latin for vein, or if you know Spanish, vena means vein. So superior from the top of the body, inferior vena cava from the bottom of the body. So this is blood that's coming back to the heart because it needs to get back to the lungs. And before it goes to the lungs, the heart is going to pump it. This blood would then enter the right atrium. You should know that. And from the right atrium, it would go to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it would move out of the heart via the right and left pulmonary arteries. Pulmon means lung. So these are arteries because they're taking blood from the heart, but they're taking the blood to the lungs to get oxygenated. So if you notice, these arteries actually are blue, indicating deoxygenated blood. So these are the one type of arteries that carry deoxygenated blood, the ones that take the blood to the lungs. From here, the blood's going to go to the lungs where it's going to get replenished with oxygen and come back to the heart via the right and left pulmonary, because they're coming from the lung, pulmon, and now these vessels bring blood back to the heart, so they should be referred to as veins, the right and left pulmonary veins. So notice the blood came to the heart before it went to the lungs to get a contraction, increased pressure, because that keeps the blood moving at a higher speed. So the blood that was deoxygenated entered via the superior and inferior vena cava, got a pump from the heart, then went out the pulmonary arteries, got oxygen in the lungs, came back the pulmonary veins. Now it's going to get another contraction. So from number 5, the right and left pulmonary veins, it's going to go into the left atrium. And from the left atrium, the blood's going to go to the left ventricle. And from the left ventricle, the blood's going to be pumped out. So that's an artery, pumped out, the biggest artery in your body, the aorta. One thing I tell students to remember this is that the right side of the heart pumps blood to the lung. So I don't know why this always helped me, but I remembered right to lung, right to lung. So if you remember right to lung, you remember that the right side is the side that has deoxygenated blood and is going to send the blood to the lungs, and it's going to come back on the left, so the left side has oxygenated blood. I hope that helps you remember this. Okay, so let's move on. What I have here are basically the numbers that I pointed out in the previous slide, and I said it. This is written in words, so if you had a hard time following me, you can go back and look at these numbers and write them out while you look at the picture. Let's review this again. This is another depiction. What I like about this picture is that the heart isn't as detailed. It doesn't have like the right and left pulmonary arteries and pulmonary vein. They're kind of like represented as one, but it kind of shows you a better idea of how this all works. So let's again start with the right side of the heart. The right, remember, right to lung, right is deoxygenated blood. So here, I'm gonna try to keep it the same as in the other picture, but it's just a different way of looking at it. So number 1, the vessels that bring the deoxygenated blood back to the heart, what were those? Can you remember? The superior and inferior vena cava, they're veins. They bring blood back to the right atrium. From the right atrium, we go to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, we go out. So in the other diagram, they were split into the right and left. Here, they're just showing it as one. The pulmonary arteries, which take the blood. What I like about this is that they show you the lungs. So do you see how here that vessel splits into the capillaries? In the lungs, it's where you breathe in and bring the oxygen. So you're oxygenating your blood. It's turning red. And then that blood goes back to the heart. Now we're on the left side of the heart. We're at the pulmonary veins, bringing blood back to the heart. From the pulmonary vein, we go to the left atrium. From the left atrium, we go to the left ventricle, and we go out the biggest artery in your body, which is the aorta, number 8. From the aorta, you can see that it branches into the smaller arteries that take blood on top to your head, your brain, on the bottom to all your organs, your digestive system, right? Your liver, your kidneys, the capillaries in your body, your legs. Then those capillaries join back to form veins from the lower and upper body, and then they come back via the superior and inferior vena cava, and we start all over again. So try to work that through a couple times on your own. Now some questions. In which blood vessels is there deoxygenated blood? Blood without oxygen. Aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, or left atrium? Well, right away, the left atrium isn't a vessel, so you can exclude that. You should remember aorta is the biggest one in your body that carries the oxygenated blood to all your body. Pulmonary artery, do you remember what that one is? Pulmonary vein. The correct answer is a pulmonary artery. That's the artery that carries blood from your heart to your lungs, so it's deoxygenated. Here's a little question. When you run, your legs require a lot of oxygen and glucose to make ATP so your muscles can contract. Once blood has released its oxygen to your cells of your leg muscles, what is the pathway it must take to get more oxygen in the lungs? Well, if your blood is in your legs, It gave your legs oxygen, so it's deoxygenated. So it joins into venules, then veins, and then it's going to go back to your heart via the inferior vena cava. Then it's going to go to the right atrium, right ventricle, out the pulmonary arteries to the lungs where it'll get more oxygen and come back the pulmonary veins. Here's another question. A hospital laboratory technician injects a dye into your vein of your arm. What chamber of the heart will the dye reach first? Well, the blood's going back to your heart, so it would reach the right atrium first. Now we're going to go over stages of the cardiac cycle or heartbeat. Here, I would like to start with A, which is this one. If you're looking at the screen, it's your left upper heart. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but there's little light blue, like half circles on the outer part of each atrium. That's showing where the heart is contracting. One point I'd like to make is that the right and left atrium contract simultaneously. So the right atrium and the left atrium contract. When that contracts, the AV valves are open and the blood moves down to the ventricles. Now let's move to B. When the ventricles contract, notice the AV valves close, and that's to prevent backflow of the blood back into the atriums. When the ventricles contract, the blood is pushed out via this pulmonary trunk, and it goes out to the right and left pulmonary arteries from the right side of the heart, and from the left side of the heart, it's going out the aorta. And then C, the final picture, is when the heart is relaxed, right? And then the semilunar valves close, but the AV valves are open because blood is filling up in the atriums, and then that blood is flowing into the ventricles and filling up. So sometimes you've heard of this lub-dub sound that the heart makes. So the lup is when the AV valves close. It's written there under B. Lup, the heart contracts, those close, lup. And then dub is when the AV valves open and the semilunar valves close. When the heart contracts, we refer to the heart as being in systole, which is contraction. And usually when people say heart contracting, they're referring to the ventricles contracting. So that would be B in this picture. So B, the heart is in systole, contraction. And C, when the heart is relaxing, it's in diastole. That's going to be important with blood pressure. So I always told my students, if you're in diastole too long, you will die because your heart can't be relaxed too long. So diastole is when your heart's filling up, relaxed. Systole when it's contraction. I have it written there. We're going to start talking about blood pressure, but we're going to do most of it in our next video. Blood pressure refers to the pressure that blood is exerting on the vessel walls. So I want you to know where is pressure the highest, and then during which part of the cardiac cycle is it the highest. So we've talked about which blood vessel has the highest pressure. Those are the arteries because they're the closest to the heart. And blood pressure is highest during systole, when the heart contracts. Because when the heart contracts, all that blood's being pushed out of the heart and your blood vessels have to expand. You can feel this as your pulse. So if you put your fingers on your wrist, you're feeling an artery there. And every time you feel that pulse, it's that stretching of the arterial walls. Remember, they have that elastin that happens when the heart contracts, when it's in systole. And usually your pulse should be around 60 to 80 beats per minute. So your pulse is actually recording your heart rate. And finally, the last thing I'd like to cover in this video is how blood pressure and velocity differ in different blood vessels. So this is a very useful diagram that I want you to be able to interpret. First, let's just focus on the bottom part. Let's look at the x-axis. It says blood flow starting from the heart, meaning the left side is from the heart, and as we move to the right, we're getting away from the heart. Y-axis is relative magnitude, so they're not giving you a unit, but just think lower. The bottom of the y-axis is less, let's say, pressure units than the top. All right, now the lines. Let's start here with on top, blood pressure. So the top red line is measuring pressure, the middle velocity, and the bottom, if you follow it, says total cross-sectional area of vessels. Okay, so now let's look at the top line, see how it's separated into arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins. So think about it as moving away from the heart. The first blood vessel the blood is in is the arteries. So arteries find pressure. The pressure is the highest in the arteries. Why does the line go up and down, up and down? That's because every time the heart is contracting, the pressure goes up. Velocity also goes up every time the heart contracts, like speed, right? Now, total cross-sectional area, because we have fewer arteries, the total area is less. Each individual artery has a bigger area than each capillary, but we think about it as a whole, the total area for the arteries is less. Now let's move to capillaries, the middle part. So in capillaries, what has happened? The pressure has gone down and the velocity has gone down. It makes sense if pressure is down, velocity is also down. And total area has shot up. So that makes sense. Think about a hose. If you open the nozzle of the hose, you're increasing the area. The pressure of the water is going down and the velocity is also going down. I always make an analogy of a hose with this. Why is the cross-sectional area so much greater in the capillaries? Because there are so many more capillaries in your body than there are arteries, because the capillaries have to reach every cell of your body. So each capillary is tiny, about the diameter of one red blood cell, but because there are so many, the overall area is much larger, and so the velocity of the blood goes down. Then the blood has to rejoin and get into veins. Again, when you get back to veins, the area goes down quite a bit because there are fewer veins. And so the velocity and pressure will go up a little. It will never reach as high as it was in the arteries because you're much further away. So to sum up, blood is under the highest pressure in the arteries. What happens to the pressure as it travels to other vessels? It goes down. Why does it slow down? So pressure goes down and velocity goes down. Why does it go down? Because total area increases. That's it for today. Thank you.